Welcome back to the Forging Alpha podcast. Today we are talking about mental health, but what the Forging Alpha podcast is. We got to get this intro down, man.
I was thinking about this earlier today. We got to have it. We have a good hook. We got to have a good hook to this that's clear, direct, concise. But either way, here we are.
Where we're talking about fitness, mindset, nutrition, and kind of just everything it takes to live a great life, specifically as a man.
I feel like we got to put that more towards the front.
I think we probably should.
That's the outcome, right? Like that's the dream outcome.
Yeah, but then if they already clicked, then they're already in here anyways, I guess. So.
That's why we're just kind of talking through it right now.
Yeah.
But if you were first listening to it and you hear Forging Alpha podcast where we do X, Y, and Z, and you're like,
I think that makes more sense.
But if you start first talking about, just fitness, nutrition, people might just,
I think you're right. But today we're talking mental health.
We are.
And kind of all the aspects that lead into that. And what got you thinking about that to begin with?
What got me thinking about this? First of all, not medical advice.
Disclaimer.
I think a lot of dudes struggle with this. We just got over Men's Mental Health Month. We should have talked about this in June.
Oh, yeah. I kind of didn't realize that was a thing until I saw some type of graphic about it. And I was like, oh. And now it's July.
Yeah. So that's one thing. I meant to make a post on it, and I figured it would just be a good podcast theme to start discussing, as well as just a lot of dudes struggling, and that I've also seen clientele, friends, and if you just look around, I think that, the statistics on how many guys are committing suicide, how many dudes are struggling, and it's still stigmatized to talk about mental health. And I think that also, there's some far ends of the spectrum where, you have to get super wishy-washy and, that therapy is the only answer to things. And so I want to talk through, maybe some of the baseline things that you could do, because I think at some level we all have aspects, especially at this stage of life, being fathers, being dads, being in the middle of our professional stuff, that we all have some level of anxiety, maybe not depression, but, there's a lot of pressure in today's lives. And some of the baseline things that I find help for me, that help for some clients that I've not necessarily worked through them with, because I'm not here claiming to be a therapist, but help them in aspects that have definitely benefited them, where they legitimately are telling me that, this is making me feel way better. I feel like myself again. So that's high level what brought me to the topic of talking about it, because if you haven't been impacted by it, you'll probably be impacted by it at some point, and I feel like staying ahead of it with a lot of things is probably the best approach.
Yeah, and then if you can have some tactical tools in the tool belt to help you deal with some of that stuff when it comes up, you're going to have a lot better time going through that. But when you wait until the point of your life's crashing down, then you're trying to do something about it, that's going to be a lot more difficult position to be in. So if you can be proactive with this stuff instead of reactive, that's going to be huge.
100%. And I think that there's two sides of the equation. Like there's general stress, life pressure, anxiety that is going to be normal. It's not me.
That was we just got phones at the other office, and they're connected in through our cell phones as well.
Was that a ringtone?
I guess it was, yeah.
Nice.
That was interesting.
But general life stress, which I feel like we are just getting kind of soft as a society. So identifying what is natural stressors that you're going to have to deal with, unless you just want to be living in your parents' basement, not working a job and not dealing with achieving anything meaningful in life. But when is something actually at a place where maybe you need to seek extra help? Maybe you need to go to therapy. You need to go see maybe some medicinal help with certain things. And then there's probably a middle ground with those things where, life's not getting any easier from a stress standpoint, from a sickness standpoint. We're probably the sickest and most depressed as a nation on paper that we've ever been. And I think that definitely stems back to, a lot of the baseline things that we talk about. So, my stance is that if you're not targeting root cause things, for example, if you feel off, it could definitely be a hormone thing. If you're not getting those things checked out, if you're not sleeping relatively well, if you're not eating a relatively good diet that's, providing your brain and your body with nutrients that actually make you feel good, that actually provide you with those feel good chemicals in your body, you're never going to feel that great no matter how many drugs you take or go to therapy. And if you're not doing things like cardio, right, intense exercise where you're getting out of breath and getting those endorphins, everything else is just going to be putting duct tape over the root cause solution. It's never targeting that. And at some point, it's going to rear its ugly head, or you're always just going to still have it lingering in the background. And I think that's where people, get to those positions of, nothing's working and they pull the plug. And that's where maybe we see some of the suicidal things, and it's, sad to see.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I think, a lot of guys just don't want to talk about it. So
where do you think that comes from?
The not talking about it part, one, it's shunned by society. I feel like it's looked at as weak to talk about it. And there's a lot of societal pressures where you feel, as a man, like it's your job to kind of shut up and just do what you need to do to get through. So I think that's probably where, what would you say?
I think that's a huge part of it. And then the other part that I see is I think people don't have the vocabulary or knowledge to kind of talk about that type of thing, or they haven't done the self-reflection to be aware enough about like how they're feeling and what they're going through to be able to talk about it in the first place. They kind of just put the blinders on and go sort of do the work, and they don't really address all the stuff that's going through their head.
I would agree. And on top of that too, this is maybe in that bucket, in that category of, you're not just depressed, you're just not building towards something. And I think that's a big thing. Like if you don't have any hope of bigger outcomes in your life and you're not building something towards that vision, like, man, like it's a pretty miserable existence, and it's really easy to get caught in that loophole of, you're miserable and you're depressed and you're anxious because like the stress isn't meaningful. You're not building towards anything bigger that like you look forward to. It's just like, whatever it is, maybe you're in a career where you've hit the ceiling and all you have to look forward to is the weekends or the 1 to 2 weeks that you get to go on vacation and just drink your sorrows away. And I feel like that's a loophole that the majority of Western men are in.
The vacation loophole?
Not building towards anything bigger.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If you don't have, it's Tony Robbins said that happiness is found in progression. And I totally agree with that. If you don't have something that you're working towards, and it can be anything, it doesn't have to be financial. It could be fitness. It could be some type of family goal. It could be anything. It could 100%. Be making a beautiful painting. It doesn't really matter. You have something that you're passionate about, that you're driving towards, and that you're making progress so that you can feel like you're growing as a human. I think that's kind of what makes you more conscious and more aware of things in general, is like as you progress and you realize some of your potential that you have, you start to become better in every aspect of life. And it changes your perception on things, and you just experience more of life. But if you don't push yourself to grow and you stay in your tiny little bubble of the information that you have so far and the people that you've met in the last 20 years or whatever it is, that maybe you went to school with them, or maybe they live in your neighborhood, but if you never get out and like meet new people and have new experiences, and that's just, to me, that's not a very exciting life.
Yes, 100%. And I feel like like you mentioned, it doesn't have to just be a career thing. Obviously, I think that you should have something towards you're building towards in multiple different aspects and buckets, right? Like if you've got something that keeps you creative, something that's, you're building off of from a creative standpoint that you're building, and then something you're building towards, in the physical realm, those are things that'll probably keep you fairly content with that. But if you're not ever building towards things, and that's where like the positive stress comes into the equation. So many people just try to avoid the stressors entirely, right? They try to nuke it with substances, live for the weekends. But that's not the solution. The solution is actually pursuing meaningful stress, because you're going to have fulfillment and satisfaction in that, versus you can only drink so many margs at the beach or sit watching Netflix.
Yep.
And you're not going to feel any less depressed or anxious doing that. Like rest and stuff, but you'd be better off maybe getting more quality sleep and doing that versus living to go binge watch a series on Netflix every single night.
So let's, so that we can arm people with some more verbiage around this, how would you kind of describe what anxiety is, or how you perceive it? Because at least until until probably a couple years ago when I was going through a little bit of a darker time as far as like my motivation and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I really understood how I perceived anxiety. So it just kind of sounded like something that didn't really apply to me.
Yeah.
But I think I just didn't really understand what it was.
Yeah. And I think a great terminology is to be taken with a grain of salt because there's different aspects of it. But anxiety is fear of the unknown in the future, where, you know, you've got these unsettled feelings because of what's to come and the unknown, or a lack of hope for the future. I think depression is more related to the past and depression towards that. I might be getting it mixed up, but I've heard that described in that aspect of, you know, unsettlement about future events or unsettlement about the life you've lived up to this point, past experiences, potentially some regret about the things you have or haven't done up to this point that, you know, is now causing you to be in this slump currently. What would you say?
I would say probably the symptom that I notice the most is racing thoughts in general, or like continued thought loops or rumination. Okay. Generally negative. Like if you were obsessively stuck in a thought loop that's positive, that's probably gonna have a good outcome.
Yeah.
But if I feel like I'm anxious, it's generally because I'm stuck in some type of thought loop, or I'm thinking about something that I can't actually have any control over right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like the thing that's kind of, not to totally jump around, but the thing that's sort of helped me the most as of late with that is having like some type of meditation practice where you start to just catch your thought loops faster. You have a stronger awareness of your thoughts.
Yeah, that's pretty big, dude.
It is. It's really big. Because,
and I think that where that like vein fits into, I was listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast the other day, and he talked about how like one of the main themes in his podcast, and this is a guy that has a top 20 podcast in the world, has interviewed the biggest high performers in the world. And he talked about how 80 to 90% of high performers have some type of meditation practice. It's not all like transcendental meditation where they're sitting doing home meditation, but some type of reflection period throughout the course of their day, right? Where maybe like for me right now, it's the sauna. Like I did it this morning, starting my day off with the sauna and my Phoenix journal, where for me, it's like reflection on my day, doing morning prayers, and planning out my day, as well as my vision, like reflection on the vision. For me, like that is a meditation aspect for me, where, you know, you're kind of taking inventory in some way or fashion. So
what do the prayers look like for you?
For me?
Yeah.
So I'm Catholic, so like I've got kind of preset prayers that I read. So there's a whole litany of prayers based on like proficiency with work, to answer my calling for the day, for my family. Typically, if I'm doing individual prayers, I'm typically praying for direction. I'm praying for my marriage. I'm praying for my family, for the loved ones, and I carry my cross daily in a way that, you know, I'm pursuing meaningfulness in life. And for me, like a lot of my prayers focus around like I'm not here to bear this all on my own. Like, you know, God's got a direction for me, and versus just completely leaning into that, like I need to have faith and I need to have reassurance in the direction that I'm going, and then take action, and that things are going to fall into place if I do my part and I pray about it, that things are going to turn out the way they need to be. And so I don't need to be anxious about the future of those things if I am doing my part and reflecting back on that vision and having reflection periods of, you know, what is God telling me, the direction that I should be going in these things. So that's what it looks like for me. Yeah.
I like that. So I've been, we haven't really talked about this much, but I would say I've been kind of open to spirituality, but not necessarily religious.
Yeah.
So I've kind of been going through a little bit of a spiritual journey myself, from the sense of kind of some of the sort of the original Hebrew texts, mm-hmm. and some of the translations of that, and some of the symbolism of it. And I've taken the side more of the metaphysical side. Traditionally, that's like more of what I've studied. Okay. And now seeing specifically with like Joe Dispenza's work and some describing the quantum field and intelligence and God as all kind of the similar thing, that was really kind of eye-opening for me in the last couple months to see that somebody that's never really been open to religion in a traditional sense, being able to understand some of the benefits of the practice and the rituals from what I appear to have the logical side of it, or the way that my brain perceives it, has been really interesting. And I've kind of came to a very similar conclusion for myself with meditation, is that when I sit in the silence and kind of let the thoughts go, that's another thing real quick before we dive into that. One of the things that has helped me with the kind of racing thoughts that run through my head is if I can visualize that you just have to let it go, as opposed trying to wrestle with the thoughts. So that's where I get my head stuck in, is when I try to wrestle with the thoughts and reason with myself. It's like I'm reasoning against myself and then I'm always going to win type thing. So if I can just like, through meditation, I've gotten better at just letting go of the thought and replacing that by thinking of something else or having gratitude. Yeah. And that's been really helpful for me, because then it just gets me back into the present moment. But where I was going at with the prayer side of things and meditation is when I sit in that silence, it feels like I have a stronger connection with intuition, or presumably, I would assume how you describe God or God speaking to you. I kind of perceive that as that internal intuition. Yeah. And when I sit in the silence, that's way stronger, and I connect with that voice more. And in reflection, I've realized that like that guiding voice is why I'm exactly where I'm at today. And I never could have planned all that stuff out. Never in a million years. And I could have been anxious about it, or I probably was anxious about it, but everything happened to work out the way it's quote unquote supposed to. And that is incredibly reassuring. Yeah. And that's like a kind of confidence or peace that I feel like I haven't really had before. And I've really been enjoying that lately.
That's awesome. Yeah. I feel like if there's not, and again, this kind of stems back to the struggle that we all have, right? With it's just head down, blinders on, just going. And if there's never reflection points of taking a step back and quietness and like taking inventory of things, you know, of all the aspects of faith, family, finance, fitness, like you're going to have anxiety about certain things, especially if you don't know like the direction that you're going and you're just going, specifically because that tends to lead you down roads where you're not supposed to be moving towards. So I think that's one of the things too, is like anxiety in and of itself isn't bad, but it's probably the signal that something needs to change within your course and to redirect. So like it's meant to be there, and you're supposed to use it as a tool, not just to stay there and wallow in it without making any adjustments, right? Because if you're in that, and you know, let's say it's not biochemical, like you don't have things off with your hormones and you don't have PTSD from going to war, which, you know, that's a whole nother topic in and of itself, which is, you know, there probably needs to be a little bit more, I don't know, how would you say it? Like intervention would be the word. Like it should be just a guiding course of how you should do it. And it's a fascinating thing though, because we're so hesitant to change our life because of the fear of what we're going to be missing out on or giving up, or the fear of the unknown, going in another path or direction, or changing things up. I mean, I'm still experiencing that in myself, you know, and I feel like I've got such a desire to get to the next level that I will overcome it, sometimes slower than I probably should. But that driving force of like, you know, if I want that next phase of professionalism or fitness, like I've got to go through the shitstorm and the uncomfortableness of changes, of sacrificing the good to get to the great. But for a lot of people, it's way easier identifying with that I am an anxious person or I'm a depressed person and just staying exactly where we're at and never overcoming that than it is to go into the unknown in a different direction.
Yeah, because the uncomfortable things are scary for people because they're different. And it's wild how quickly people get in the routine of things.
Yeah.
Like you drive to work the same way, you probably do the same thing when you get in the office. Everybody's in such a routine that anything outside of that routine, whether it's for the good or the bad, can be tough for them.
Yeah.
Which is also at the same time, though, once you realize that your life is a combination of habits that you've formed, and most of them are on autopilot anyways, hopefully you can get some reassurance that once you put a new habit in place, you're not even gonna have to think about it. Like, it's not like I get up at the gym get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym and I think about, oh, do I want to go work out this morning? It's a habit. It's part of my day. And I have associated the benefit that I get from that with benefit and happiness that I get throughout the rest of the day. So it's an easy decision for me, but it's not like I have to make that choice every day because now it's a habit.
Yeah.
I
negotiation.
Of course there was a period where it was tough and it was like, oh, I'm missing my alarm and you got to set all the alarms. But if you can fight through that and get to the other side, it's not going to be that difficult forever.
No, it's not. And hell, I was having this conversation with a couple of client onboardings because especially when it comes to things like nutrition, it's the least sexy part of the equation for most people in their fitness journey, right? It's not like going to the weight room and getting hyped up and listening to music and slanging and banging some iron. If you're an athlete, it's not like going to the field and whatever, doing drills, doing practices, because like there's nobody there clapping for you when you hit a set. You're not going to put up an IG reel of you finishing your salad and your steak.
Yeah.
But once you get over the hurdle of doing it consistently and that discomfort, and you start feeling the benefits and you start seeing the benefits, and then you start seeing what it's like when you go back to maybe your old ways of eating, it's a lot easier to stick with it once it's ingrained and you're feeling the positive benefits of it. But that initial hurdle is the hardest part, especially for something like that. You know, similar with the gym. Once you start seeing those benefits physically and mentally, it's a lot easier to stick with it once you're in that pattern. But man, those first phases and steps, and most people don't get on the other side of that mountain. They usually stop right in the middle before they're able to reap those benefits.
Yeah, they're just having all of the pain and frustration of doing the new thing without any of the benefits or payoff.
Yeah. So for you kind of going into that realm of, let's say, wellness and health, what practices for you move the needle from a mental health standpoint? Whether it's, you doing your cardio, whether it's those 5 a.m. workouts, your sleep, your diet.
All of it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say first and foremost is starting my day with activity. If I could just pick one, I think it would be starting my day with activity.
Yeah.
Just because that's naturally a good way to clear my head and the things that are going to come with that. But that's the number one for me is going to the gym in the morning, which conveniently is just downstairs because we have a home gym. Having some type of a meditation practice or just clearing your head. And number 3, I would put right up there with it is don't get on your phone in the morning.
Yeah.
There's so many people that are going to roll out of bed. They probably turn off their alarm clock and they immediately respond to all the notifications, open up Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is. And then you give your mind the opportunity to go back to the yesterday's thoughts because you're going to have the same triggers and then your mind feeds off the energy of that anxiety. And it wants you to feel that way because that's how it felt yesterday. That's how it's comfortable feeling. It wants to feel the same. So if you trigger your mind with a whole bunch of bullshit, responding to stuff in the morning, that's not a great way to start the day, especially because your brain's so much more impressionable in the mornings. So if you can have that calm clarity, maybe you're going over your goals, that's going to be huge. Daily walks, another great way for me to kind of hit the reset button.
Yeah.
And especially if I can get outside. Right now it's pretty hot, so I come in a little sweaty, but I'm enjoying it. Good way to get some steps in and have some of that clarity.
Yeah. Amazing.
What are some of the biggest habits that you've been able to put in place for clients that give them results when it comes to mindset?
So I think more so just, I would deem it more like resiliency with your brain because, you can have as much willpower as you want, as much toughness as you want, but some of the toughest people in the world are the ones that end up succumbing to suicidal components, right? Or anxiety, because, a lot of times there's just, you can only be so strong if there is something off from a baseline physiology or biological standpoint. So I like targeting those things head on. So examples of that are, if you're not, first and foremost, if you're not moving your body, for me, it's like cardio. Like if you're in a slump of things, cardio is kind of a game changer for that, especially like I've noticed that since starting back on the high rocks training, like running, like getting back into that is just, it puts me in a great mental headspace regardless of where I'm at that day. So I think that, getting those endorphins running, nobody ever finished, a run and they were breathing heavy and we're like, man, I feel significantly worse than before this run, unless, outside of just being out of breath.
Yeah.
But, 30 minutes later, you're going to feel significantly better. It's going to be really hard to feel your best from a trickle-down effect if you're not sleeping. If we're not having some base layer of sleep, some people are a lot better about it and that are just wired to not sleep. But I think a lot of people, like, that just goes at the bottom of the list with sleep. And it's probably the last thing that people look at. And it's probably the biggest thing. Like if you are struggling mentally, that if you put that towards the top of the list, even though it's annoying, even though it's not fun, that is probably going to move the needle for you the most, just because that is when your body and your brain is doing an oil change. So that honestly ends up being the biggest thing that we talk about and we focus on for guys that are in that struggle and, busy career, busy profession, kids, family, workouts. The more things you start tacking on top of your life, the more the stress, the more you got to recover. And recovery is sleep. So if it's like an oil change for your body, what happens to your vehicle if you go 6 months without an oil change? Like imagine what your body and your brain is going to do if that isn't happening. And it's kind of interesting too, as I'm doing more blood work with people and genetic testing. And there are people that are more at risk for neurodegeneration, right? Where in the future, Alzheimer's, Parkinson, it runs in their family. And one of the best ways to fight against that is actually getting sleep. And we'll notice that, that tends to start going out if we're not sleeping, but also we see more anxiety, just being wired to not be able to shut things off at work. And that translates into, moodiness, maybe bouts of anxiety, depression with sleep. So that ends up being a big thing. And then I think that, fueling your body with the raw materials that actually create positive mental phases. So B vitamins, vitamin D. I would come from the Pacific Northwest back in Washington State, where there are some of the highest suicide rates in the nation, where the sun is out the least. And so they are directly tying that back to vitamin D levels. And, I've worked with some people that are in that part of the world and, we go get their vitamin D levels checked. It's not where it's supposed to be. And so like there are direct ties to some of those things. So, we get those things tied up, and then, guys that have hormonal imbalances, we're seeing testosterone levels go down lower and lower every single year. The average testosterone level is equivalent to a 70-year-old man back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So that's going to play a big part. And that's going to play a big part, trickle-down effect of lower testosterone is lower motivation. You're probably not going to have a drive to go pursue building a meaningful life. And so then you're kind of this double whammy effect where you don't have motivation to go do anything, and then you're not building something meaningful. And so then you've got kind of a whole shitstorm of life.
Not a great spot.
Not a great spot to be. So
not a lot of momentum.
Not a lot of momentum. And, if you need to go to therapy and you need to do those things, I'm all for it. But if you're not tackling those things, I think that you'll always have like lingering things in the background, and things like therapy. Again, unless you've been to war and you've got PTSD or you've got some major issues, therapy has its time and place. But if we're not sleeping, if we're not moving our body, we're not eating well, and we're not hydrating, it's kind of just mental masturbation.
Somebody waved at the window, and I kind of thought maybe Lauren was having a baby right now. Just come in. It's that's kind of important. Not the case though, as far as I know.
That would be a funny interlude for,
That
for
would
this
be.
podcast.
That would be.
So, yeah, I think that, you know, it's something that it's not getting any better right now. And it's usually the simple things in life and usually the tough things, right? It's the meaningful stressors. Like, it's not easy going and doing cardio. They get you out of breath. It's not extremely convenient eating well day in and day out. Getting your blood work done. Like, these are all not things that are going to be super fun. But if the pain of where you're at is going to override the pain of changing, it's worth it. It's worth it.
And I tell you what is fun is feeling good, being able to move and run around and have fun.
I've gotten some pretty cool texts the past week from clients. You know, like I got one from a guy that we've lost about 20 pounds with him. And, you know, he's like, you know, thanks for everything that you do. And most importantly, like, I can run around with my kids now, you know, and like stuff like that is cool.
It's not just about getting the 6-pack abs.
No. In fact, that's what most people want. But like the trickle down effect of all the things that we're discussing is you're just going to have a better quality of life overall. Like, it's going to be really hard to have a great quality of life and great relationships if you're not taking care of the physical components and the mental components that lead to those things. And then that, when you have physical resilience and mental resilience, you've got more clarity on the direction you want to go in life, right? Like, how many people do you see that are maybe struggling in that phase are not taking care of themselves in any which way or fashion? And it's just like walking around with a plastic bag over your face because you have zero perspective. You can't look past that feeling of just, I feel bad. And you can't get over that feeling of being, that feeling that you're just physically and mentally out of it, and then try to pursue a big, meaningful career goal. It just is not going to happen.
Yeah, you got to have the right, if the mindset's not there and your mind's not in the right place, those big goals aren't going to happen.
What do you think comes first? And we've talked about this a little bit. The mental component or the physical component? And which one trickles into each other?
Very interesting. Of course, they play into one another. I think the mental side, and I'll kind of, so I recently came to this realization. I made an Instagram story about it the other day. I've had a crush on Lauren since I was like in since I was like 9 years old.
Got it.
So it was like third grade. And for whatever reason, as I've pieced this back together, I think that my interest in her, which then translated to like interest in females, I wanted to get in better shape to attract a mate, essentially, from the biological standpoint.
Got it.
And I think that's kind of the original reason I had behind wanting to work out in the first place, was to get into better shape so I wasn't as self-conscious and everything like that. I think because I had such a strong reason, I've never struggled to pick up the habit of being in the gym. Like, it's never, minus 1 or 2 seasons of my life, it hasn't been a challenge. And I think that's because I had that mindset so young. Like, I was dieting in 7th grade using my Fitness Pal. I would go out and run 5 miles at a time. I do workouts by myself. There was never anybody watching or pushing me. I had the internal drive because I had a reason.
Yeah.
And then I think once I saw the control or the agency I had over my life through fitness, and that, if I can change my body, then I can probably change other circumstances or outcomes. For me, I think it was the mindset that came first.
Yeah.
And that's that kept me on that path of getting up before everybody else to go to the gym in the morning before school.
Yeah.
Like, that's not typical things that a lot of people are going to do. So I think it's the mindset that happens first.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that it's probably dependent on circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So you were not like severely obese
No.
when you had that. I've had some clients that we've lost a significant amount of weight, you know, close to a dozen, that they have amplified a lot of other aspects of their life as a byproduct of the gym and getting into better shape and just feeling better as a result. So I think that for those people, like, there was a reason, right? There was a mental shift in them that they were sick of that. And so they targeted fitness, but then as a trickle-down effect, the fitness led into more mental clarity, more bandwidth, and more resiliency from a mental aspect. And then that opened the doors up of like, I'm going to pursue different business ventures because now like I actually feel good enough to do that. I feel like if you're in a position where you're relatively already healthy, and your health maybe isn't a major concern, that the mental side of things probably does come first, like you mentioned.
Just because most people are in that position of like, there's not enough pain until
exactly
they haven't hit rock bottom, so they don't have a reason to change anything.
Yeah.
So there has to be some type of mental shift usually. Yeah.
I think it's that equation of, or that phrase that healthy people have 1,000 desires, sick people have one. So if you're really unhealthy and you're really out of shape and you're sick, it's hard to have like a great mindset because all you're focused on is how bad you feel. And so if we can overcome that, but if you're already kind of in that middle ground of, you're not severely unhealthy, that's when it probably has to start more from a mental standpoint to then lead into the other components. So I feel like it's probably, there's a couple different.
Chicken or the egg?
Chicken
Which
or the
one's
egg.
first? It's hard to say.
Yeah. So whatever way is going to probably get you there, because at some aspect it does all start in your mind, right? Even the pain point of going to the gym to start there is still a thought process that has to happen before you just start moving your body or getting on a treadmill. So, but I think to the extent of which major shift comes first, I think it really depends on, how deep into hell are you with the aspect of physical sickness, health. So let's say, for instance, maybe you're somebody that does suffer from severe anxiety or depression. Like going and starting a business is probably the last thing on your mind.
Yes.
Right? So maybe just going and starting to walk and get outside and run and eat a quality diet. Down the line, that might open up the doors for other aspects of your life, but that probably is like initial step one to get you over that hump of being able to just take a step back and breathe and not having, the demons fighting you every single day.
I would say one thing that I would want to throw in there as another tactic to combat the anxiety is gratitude. And that people say that all the time. And I think I used to be a person that was like, oh yeah, people always say that, whatever, it's not important, and kind of brush it by. But once you actually try it and you're consistent with it, it changes what you're focusing on. And
Really
that's kind of what we've been talking about when you're stuck in anxiety or depression. So you can't think about anything else.
Yeah.
And you're stuck on that low vibration of the world hates me or whatever. But if you can focus on anything to be grateful for, grateful that you woke up, grateful that if you do have the health to be able to walk and be outside, grateful for the feel of the sun, whatever it is, if you can start that in the morning, that kind of creates that habit of your mind. You train your mind to look for things to be grateful for. Mm-hmm. That was the biggest turning point I had when I was dealing with some of that anxiety and depression type.
Did that come
symptoms.
first, or was it when you started getting back into the gym more? Like, was that a trickle-down effect of you started to work out more and stuff again, or did that come first?
So I did start working out first. Like I got back into the gym and the routine of that. And maybe that's what opened me up to being more open to thinking about gratitude or having the mental clarity to think about gratitude. But I noticed such a strong shift when I did make that change that I would at least recommend people try it.
Yeah.
And what that would look like, an easy thing you could do is just first thing you do when you wake up in the morning, write 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for. And then if you do that right before you go to bed, your subconscious is going to still be is going to be in that state of gratitude as you sleep. And then you're going to wake up in a lot better mood.
Yeah, 100%. It kind of just hit me this phrase that one of my mentors told me and talked about. And it's kind of the concept of why people do like cold plunges, first thing in the morning, is that his whole thought process is you can't change your psychology until you change your physiology. Mm-hmm. That's also a big Tony Robbins thing of like, if you've ever done Tony Robbins' priming process, he starts every single morning with a cold plunge and then doing like a deep breathing, like a fast, rapid breathing exercise while like pumping his arms and like changing the physical side of things before changing the mental. So, I think there's probably also something to that with people of, it doesn't have to necessarily be a cold plunge, but like for me, like this morning, I had a big focus for me on gratitude this morning. just looking around and being like, dude, if I was to look at where I'm at right now, 5 years ago, when I was waking up at 3:30 in the morning and going to the gym and not leaving and getting back home until 8 p.m., like, holy smokes. But I feel like a big shift was I'd gotten in the sauna and then gotten in the cold plunge. And then I was just, the endorphins were rolling. I was in a better place to like have gratitude with that. So, yeah.
So I recently read a book. I think it's called Mind Magic by Dr. James Doty.
Okay.
And my biggest takeaway from that book, and we've talked about it briefly, was you can't make that shift until you relax your nervous system. So going into it's the parasympathetic nervous system. For me, that was another really big shift. I think that gratitude, the cold plunge, all that stuff kind of goes together and relaxing your nervous system so that you are more open to that change in the first place. Because like you hop on your phone and you see all the bullshit, and then your primal brain thinks the cheetah's chasing me or the lion's chasing me.
Yeah, you're starting with coffee and caffeine right when you get out of bed.
Yeah. That's a really big way that we could change that. What did you say just before that, though?
What did I say? What were we talking about? Coffee, did I say? Or was it before there?
Right before that.
Right before that. Was I talking about changing the physiology before changing the psychology? Or was it after that?
No, it's that part with the cold shower. It'll come to me. I
was talking about gratitude. I got in the sauna and then the cold plunge. Where I was at today versus 5 years ago.
That's what it was. Where you were at 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That's the same thing. I think a lot of us get so fixated on, if we are like high achievers that do have goals, you can get so fixated on the goal and what you don't have, stuck in that lack, that you don't appreciate how much progress you have made. Mm-hmm. And I've had those same realizations where you look back and it's like, man, 18-year-old me was like dreaming of this moment. But once we're here, we're focused on something in the future. But if you can get back to that being present in the right now, I think that's how you have those moments of awe, like you were talking about. You come out of the sauna or the cold plunge, and you're like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Because the thing is I think people have this idea as well that once you hit a pinnacle in their mind, financially, career-wise, they're like, it's going to be the magic thing. But we've probably both hit certain aspects of that. And it's really easy just to be focused on the next thing. And I think that also is a cause of anxiety and depression.
I agree. And
continually pursuing that. Because let's say by business-wise and financially speaking, does it feel any different now than when I was making $30,000 per year? Honestly, not really.
Yeah.
Like, it's nice. Like, there's a level of satisfaction of it, but money solves a lot of problems, but it mainly solves money problem, right? And I don't think that like that goal of having $1 million cash in the bank, like, am I really going to feel any different, or am I just going to have a bigger house and more responsibilities that I'm worried about dealing with, and then it's just going to be focusing on the next thing? And I think that it's always just going to be a moving target unless you're reflecting back on it with gratitude, and I think that also having purpose with that. Like, why are you doing X, Y, and Z? Why do you want to get to a certain point in your career or make X, Y, Z amount of money? If it's just for more, I see how that can be just a continuous loophole of not being fulfilled. Because you see a lot of successful people, a lot of wealthy people that are the most depressed and the most anxious because that is the only outcome that they are focused on. It's just more for the sake of more. And then there's always going to be something else that is going to be compared to. There's always going to be those people at the next level that's keeping up with the Joneses. And, there's going to be billionaires that are always going to be doing better on you on paper, that you can look at them and be significantly depressed because you've got one Lambo instead of 10 and you don't have Jeff Bezos' yacht. So I feel like the clarity thing and the reflection of what you're doing and why you're doing it is a big deal as well.
I completely agree. If you're trying to chase after things that aren't authentic to you, it's not going to feel you all the way.
100%. Something I've been reflecting on a lot is more so like, what is the outcome I want from a lifestyle standpoint versus just the accolade and the numbers?
I would say my perception of time has also changed. And that allows me to set goals that are further out without feeling like man, I don't want to wait 10 years. I want it today.
Yeah.
You know? And that anxiety that comes with not getting to your goals fast enough.
And is that comparative thing, you think?
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then when you realize, like, at the end of the day, it's those moments of gratitude and silence where you're sitting there at the cold plunge or whatever. Those are like the types of moments that I typically visualize in the future. And in those moments, like, it's not about what anybody else has going on. It's like, you're there in the life that you created with the people that you love. And there shouldn't be that comparison. But I think where part of that comes from is that scarcity versus abundance mindset also.
Yep.
And I think if you can start to train that abundance mindset, then you lose some of that comparison.
Yeah. And I think looking at, like, what does abundance to mean for you? And I think that comes back to my reflection standpoint when I'm planning for my week, planning more of a long-term outcome of accomplishing like the big task. And then why am I actually doing those things? Relieves some of that anxiety for me. Because it's, as I've gotten busier and I'm growing the business, there's a component of that that's always there. And I find for me, when I'm more prepared and then I've got a reason for why I'm preparing and why I'm doing those things, it tends to take care of itself. Like, I am way more at peace with things. And then also, coming back to like a long-term vision and refining that process consistently with, what am I going to be doing? Like, let's say with retirement, what am I wanting to strive towards from a lifestyle standpoint? Because it's so easy, I feel like, at this phase that I'm in, like, where business is the only thing, you let everything else atrophy, especially from a lifestyle standpoint. Like we talk about the fun bucket. Like, it's so easy for those things to go last when you're trying to build big things. Yeah. But then ultimately what you're working towards is maybe a financial goal or a career goal, to where you'll get to that point where you can do those things again. But if you've let those things atrophy to so much to where all you know is work, and work is no longer a part of your life, you're going to be bored out of your mind and probably anxious and depressed, because you never established what else you were working towards, and you let everything else go to the wayside in pursuit of that goal, to where now, like, if you're not just working and everything that you'd work towards isn't leading towards what you identified as the flip side, you're going to be that rich person that's just depressed and anxious. Yeah.
And that happens more often than you might think.
Yeah, it does. It does. Like, for me, it seems so counterintuitive, like doing fishing trips or trying to start a new hobby, or like, trying to pursue martial arts. Like, I want to try doing jiu-jitsu. It seems like those should be like at the very bottom of the list. But at the same time, like, at the end of the rainbow and the vision, those are the things I'm doing on a daily basis anyway. So if I'm waiting for that perfect time to do it, it's not going to be the magical pinnacle checking out for the rest of my life at 69 that I am thinking it's going to be, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of the traditional retirement at all.
No.
I don't think that's for me. That seems terrifying, to just be working so hard for some type of a goal, and then if you didn't have anything else in your life, and then just stopped working, that doesn't sound great. But you start to realize there's so much to gain from all the other aspects of life, and the real important thing that you notice is today is all that we have anyways. So it is these moments as you're going through the grind that are the things that actually matter anyways.
Yeah.
Because that's what creates the story that you're going to look back on at the end of the road.
Yeah.
And if it was all just sunshine and rainbows and you won the lottery and sat on the beach and sipped margaritas for the rest of the time, that's not a real cool story.
No. Nope. An example of this too, because it's such a fine interweaving of all these things, right? For me, like the goal that I've established and had in my mind enough talking about is spending more of my summers traveling, where I've built my career and what I'm doing to a point where I can just be doing it on the road. That's really easy to keep talking about in theory. But then, like, the to-do list is 100 things long, so I'm just not going to do that. And it's kind of been the case the past couple summers. So I booked a 4-day trip next week that we're going to go. And there's some anxiety on my mind of how am I going to get everything done? But ultimately, if I don't start that now, like that's part of my like lifestyle design of something I'm working towards. And there's never going to be this magical point, this magical number in my bank account that I hit. I'm like, okay, now I've got permission to go do those things because I feel satisfied, because I'm always going to keep moving the needle. As things grow, the responsibilities go, and it's just going to become harder versus just forcing myself into that unknown area. And, I'm not going to take a month off right now, but I'm forcing myself to go do those things now, spend the money to go on a trip, take my family there. Cause again, like you mentioned, all I know is tomorrow or today, we might just walk in front of a car.
Oh yeah. We could get
next Friday.
Man, we could get bombed. There could be all kinds of crazy stuff.
All kinds of crazy stuff. And, we're doing this for our anniversary. And for all I know, this could be our very last anniversary. If that's the last memory that I've got, and I didn't book that trip, I would be thinking about that for the rest of my life, because my to-do list was more important than going on this and trying to figure out how I'm going to work around those things. So
you got to live life now.
You do.
You do.
Yep.
And it's not going to get easier with more kids on the road either. So yeah, now is definitely the best time. Yeah. And if starting with like some type of a smaller trip like that, then in a year or two, it probably will be a full month.
A lot of people's goals are cool on paper, but they never go through the logistics of what it's going to look like and then actually doing them. Like how many people talk about what they're going to do and their goals, and then it just never happens, So I value people that throw themselves into the arena and figure it out. Like it's such a rare thing in life. Like we do the high rocks. I mean, how many people are?
So I quickly realized that one of my best friends in life, but from college, is Chad.
Yep.
And one of my first conversations with Chad was it was my freshman year of college, and I think Lauren had met his girlfriend at a house party or something, and then I didn't drink, so I wasn't at the house party, and then we meet and we work out or whatever. And I remember telling him that my goal was to do a bodybuilding show. And he had, not in like a mean way or anything, he had said something like, oh, haha, me too, doesn't everybody, or something along those lines. And I didn't really think about it that much at the time, but I was like, in my head, I was like, no, like if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And that was the case, but that's not very common.
No.
Most people are going to be talking about a big goal because it either makes them feel good in their head, or they like what it feels like when they talk about the big goal and what other people say. But if you're not honest with yourself about it, or you don't have I think that comes back to the core of what self-confidence is keeping the promises that you make to yourself. When you keep those promises over and over for years and every day with the small choices, you're way more confident. And when you tell yourself you're going to do something, that you are actually going to do it. And then it becomes, when you say something, it's as if it is done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a pretty cool spot to be.
It is. And, tying back to mental health, if you have a great relationship with yourself, which tends to be the worst relationship people have, is you let yourself off the hook way more than anybody else. You lie to yourself about things. If that were to change and you started doing those things and you didn't talk yourself out of certain things, or because you are not designed to pursue the life you want from a evolutionary standpoint and a mental standpoint. You are designed for comfort, but the comfort is not what's going to give you the fulfillment in life. So you're almost battling these two demons on your shoulder that are pulling you in one direction or the other. And I think the best thing to do too is to flash forward in life to the rocking chair test of, if you're not going to do those things, if you don't do them, what would rocking chair 80-year-old you say about that, right? And so, you can keep talking about it and not pursuing it and just wallowing in the anxiety component, or you can just risk it all. And at least that you attempted to do it, because it's a much better place to be than saying what if in life.
And if you can come to the realization that like risking it all, like what's that even mean? Like what's the worst case scenario? oftentimes it's not actually that bad. Oftentimes it might just be humility or fear, or maybe somebody's going to make fun of you, or you're going to lose some money. But
I don't know about you, but the biggest shifts I've had in my life were when I took the most risk and, for lack of a better term, backed myself into a corner. And I had to figure it out, because if you stay within that comfort zone, like you give yourself permission to kind of stay mediocre at a certain point until there's that pressure and that pain of backing yourself into a corner or burning the boats. And that's just a better way to live life. You know, it's not easy, but it's the only way to really do it. It doesn't need to be going and completely betting your life savings at the poker table. It needs to be smart things, but the pursuit of meaningful things is it's the only way, ultimately.
I agree.
I think it's a good way to wrap it up.
That was a good one. Comment down below if you found some value out of it.
Follow, share with a friend.
And we'll catch you next time, hopefully with an actual intro.
Peace.